When you think of a samurai flick, what comes to mind? Large set pieces with shrieking warriors carrying absurdly large swords, or crimson red fields of blood glistening in the beautiful Japanese countryside. Well, Shogun is about none of these things. It's about what William Faulkner infamously stated was the only thing worth writing about: the human heart in conflict with itself. What drives us, what tears us apart within and without, and how does the way we comprehend our mortality affect how we live our lives? But presiding all over these intimate moments and internal turmoil is one character who, like a puppet master, is detached and yet totally in control. The big man himself, Torunaga. In this video, I shall investigate who Torunaga truly is, why did he become the way he is, and what was he thinking all along. Just as a warning, to peel back the layers of his armoured soul, I'm going to have to go into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the entire series, log off now, you've been warned. Now the unenlightened have gone, let's begin. Toranaga is the sort of protagonist that could only work in a show like Shogun. Unlike many shows, Shogun isn't about the plot. If the title hasn't made it perfectly clear who ends up on top, something else probably has. Shogun charts the rise of the historical Tokugawa shogunate, a period so frequently referenced in anime, gaming, and a wealth of Japanese-inspired products that it's not difficult for many to figure out who comes out on top. Now, this created a unique dilemma for the showrunners. How do we turn a plot whose conclusion is obvious and is more about one-to-one conversations than grand samurai battles into such a compelling spectacle that its tension never gives up until the very final moments? Constant misdirection. And this is where Torunaga's character slots in. Torunaga is a master of smoke and mirrors, a trickster king, and in my mind, one of the few accurate representations of a genuine political genius I've ever seen. In most series and movies, manipulators are presented as either overtly unreliable or sleazy to hammer home the message. Littlefinger in Game of Thrones stands out as a great example of this. He has such a strong veneer of sleaziness that when he betrays a character or is revealed to have been involved in a nefarious plot, it's rarely a surprise. We saw it coming 12 miles away. But in real life, this just doesn't hold water. The worst thing you can come across if you want to truly manipulate is as untrustworthy. Politics is a field where double-crossing is just part of the game. So the one who comes across as instantly unreliable won't be able to gain the trust of enough people to manipulate them for their benefit, nor will they be able to misdirect their enemies because they'll just be far too predictable. Just like the archetypical prince of Machiavelli's imagination, the effective manipulator does everything to project an image of trustworthiness. And Torunaga represents this motif to such perfection that we as the audience are also drawn into his web. By seeing only the public face of Torunaga, just like every other character, we see things as he wants us to see them and not how they actually are. When the council accuses him of warmongering, despite the validity of the charges, we see a war-wearied old man who wants nothing more than peace. And when he sacrifices Mariko to further his ambitions, we see a man pushed to the edge, forced to do anything to survive, which makes the ending even more satisfying despite its simplicity and lack of spectacle, because the revelation that all along we are Yabushige, we are the fool drawn into Torunaga's performance of a just, virtuous man, is a severe shock to the system. But what made Torunaga into this master trickster? Well, that's a slightly more difficult question to answer. You see, throughout the show, we only get pieces of Torunaga's past, and much like everything else about him, they're presented either by unreliable witnesses or potentially outright fabricated. But from the little info we can glean, it seems that Torunaga's traumatic teenage years defined his viewpoint. From an early age, Torunaga was ripped from comfort and certainty represented by his mother and thrown into the dangerous arena of Sengoku-era politics. Forced to adopt the position of his father and surrounded by enemies, young Torunaga could have chosen to either embrace the chaos and learn how to thrive within it, or embrace full certainty and fall. He chose the former, and this is what truly defines his character. You see, as we learn at the end, Torunaga follows a unique form of stoicism. He does not believe in agency. The notion that any one man can steer fate to Torunaga seems like a form of arrogance that will only lead to your downfall. In Torunaga's mind, we are all tossed about by the tide of fate and can only follow its flows to avoid suffocation. Stay in one position and the tide will swallow you up and spit you out, but flow with it and it cannot consume you. So Torunaga maintains an outwardly honorable exterior while shrouding his plots and schemes in a veil of secrecy so thick even his closest companions don't know what lies beneath. For me, the best example of why he does this is the way Toranaga manipulates the legacy of Maruko's father's betrayal. Inspired by the real story of the Honoji incident, through bits and pieces dotted throughout the narrative, we find that years prior, Maruko's dad, incensed by the tyrannical actions of his master, probably the pacification of the Ikoiki, successfully plotted a betrayal of his master and was forced to unalive himself by a successor. Now, some like Ochi no Kaba suspect things are not as I just described, that in fact Toranaga was behind the plot and because of this developed somewhat of an irrational hatred of him. Now you might think having an enmity of a key figure in Japan is a net negative, but Toranaga knows that irrationality and impulsivity, whether out of fear or love, makes one predictable and therefore easy to anticipate. So when conflict arises and one of the key protagonists involved is Ochi no Kata, he couldn't be happier. You see, before Ochi no Kata got herself involved, Toranaga was in an impossible position. The council was against him and he had no military way out. And even worse than this, the sizable force he raised after escaping Osaka was decimated by an extreme earthquake that nearly took his own life as well. Therefore, if the council simply united against him, he would have been a goner. That is, until Ochi no Kata takes charge. You see, she has such an irrational fear of Toranaga's deviousness that the weaker he becomes, the more fearful she does. This paranoia drives her to use Ishido to resolve disunity among the council with coercion rather than conciliation and power broken. By showing she is motivated by emotion so overtly, her actions become predictable, and so Torunaga sees an opportunity to pounce. Firstly, he uses the memory of Maruko's father to carry out Crimson Sky, win over Ochi, and eventually win the war. The fact that throughout all of this, the truth of the incident was completely irrelevant, to me really gets to the core of Toranaga. We never know, was he actually involved? Why was he involved? Was it his sense of justice or a power grab? Or even a very strong lesson to Toranaga of the importance of staying in the shadows? We'll never know. But as Toranaga understands, the truth doesn't matter, only what people believe. He knows that you have to deal with the reality as it is and not based on your principles or delusions of grandeur. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If not, no refunds in your time.